Hello and welcome back to Infinite Remote Control. I'm John, and in this video I'm going to be doing an in-depth review of the Traxxas Stampede 4x4. So if you go into the video description and you click show more, you're going to see a full list of my positives, negatives, what needs upgrading, handling, and also an overall summary of this car. Go ahead and read through that as you're watching the review. I'm going to briefly go over some of those topics. For the what needs upgrading section, I would highly suggest reading that before you buy this car. A lot of that you don't necessarily need. It all depends on how hard you're bashing, but stuff like aluminum shock caps, you're gonna need those. And you can go ahead and buy the car and drive it and upgrade as you need upgrading. I hate people that go out and buy a car and then put $300 more worth of upgrades that they just heard people talk about before they even freaking drive the car. So I'd encourage you to go out, but I just gave you a list so that you can have a guide if you break a part, or if you feel like, hey, I'm ready to upgrade this part, what should I get? Well, here's a list of my essential things that I feel like this car needs upgraded. I really want to start with positives because this is a fairly negative review. Stock system, even with the 2-pole brushless system, has a ton of power. The small size in comparison to an 8 scale makes it easy to take places when it's a monster truck. Solid proven design based on the Slash 4x4, just with a shorter chassis. Shock guards, there's something that you probably would overlook when looking at this car, but they are very nice. And it has some monster truck features, the larger tires, the monster truck body, that kind of stuff. Negatives, I'll just quick get this over with. Crappy wheelie bar, weak drive shafts, but that's gonna happen whenever you have a 4x4 brushless. That's just something that you're gonna have to live with. The high body looks a little bit goofy, high center of gravity. The tires are not great on any surface, so I do suggest upgrading to prolines. I personally liked the masher style, and I wanted to try something other than the kind of mainstream trenchers that you see a lot of guys running. The tight chassis makes it hard to work on, but with a car this size, I don't really know how they could have gotten around it, other than maybe rearranging. Well, actually, I don't know. Maybe they could have. No, they couldn't have widened the chassis. I mean, you're just stuck with very little space to run large electronics for a monster truck. So you are limited there. This is a very efficient setup. I have a SC411 10-shock censored motor, 4000 kV, running off of a Castle Mamba Max ESC, and I have a servo, which you can see in the what needs upgrading section. I discussed the servo. So performance, that's what I really think that a review should be all about. I don't like guys going over and saying, I broke this, I broke that. That's why I put the list in the description, so you can read through that. And let's get on with it. So high center of gravity means that it's going to flip a lot, and I know that Traxxas just came out with the low center of gravity. I don't think that anybody's going to put a low center of gravity chassis for the Stampede for a couple reasons. One, there's a common misconception that low center of gravity is not going to be as good as a high center of gravity. Well, that was basically proven with the MT4. Although I hate that car, it did perform very well, and it would have outperformed cars like the Savage, the Revo, those kinds of monster trucks. Again, if you had a low center of gravity chassis on this, you would not flip over as much, you would glide over terrain, which that's one of the biggest negatives of this car. A positive is that it's super fast. As you can see here, I think it would have been a lot better if they had sat it that much lower. And I'm not talking about the shock, I'm talking about the chassis overall. If they dropped that chassis down half an inch, you would do a lot better and you can see you have this rear skid plate that's basically going to help take rocks and help it get up and over the rear diff housing. That's not what you want, because as you can see, as limited off-road driving as I do with this car, it has already gotten scratched up quite a bit. You're also going to see in the front, you know, you come down, that's just unnecessary. You could drop the chassis down to the height of the diff, just like that, glide over any obstacle, because you're just keep it the same height as the diff housing. The diff housing is gonna have to go over, I mean, this is gonna be your lowest part of the car, so why not make the entire chassis that low? Why make the chassis higher and make the performance suck? I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. And I've driven this car and I've driven other cars, and the cars with the low center of gravity outperform it. It gets caught on a lot of rocks, on a lot of dirt mounds, you name it, it probably gets stuck on it. It loves the on-road surface. It really handles best there. Once you have it dialed in, although it flips, it's really fun to bash it around on asphalt because it just has so much power, and it's really exciting to drive, as well as on grass. It does get over grass fairly easily with the larger tires and the high amount of torque. So off-road, if you consider grass off-road, then it's good. And make sure that you run it on thin grass. Don't run it on thick grass, although that it will handle the thick grass. That's not good for RC cars and RC motors. You want to run it on grass, kind of like a baseball field. You can go a little bit thicker than that, but don't constantly be bashing on thick grass that you have in the south. Up in the north, you're going to be a little bit better because the grass is thinner. On sand, I have a bash of this car on sand on my channel. It's under the test playlist. And this car handled the sand very well. Again, enjoyable. But once you put a little rock, or not little, but something that big in its way, it's going to mess it up. And I will go ahead and talk about that right now. It doesn't go over obstacles like you would think a monster truck would. You have your MT4, which handled obstacles fairly well. Even a Revo or a Savage, which those are A scales, I understand that. But you scale down the obstacle, you scale down the car, it should be able to handle all of the rocks and off-road terrain relatively well, but it doesn't. One of the reasons is that you have the higher center of gravity, which means that whenever you go up and over an obstacle, it's gonna have the tendency to become unstable in the air. With the lower center of gravity, you're able to dial the car in a little bit nicer in the air. You're gonna land better. And listen, if you have a low center of gravity chassis, it's gonna bottom out at the exact same time as this does, because the first thing that's hitting is your diff case. So also, though, this is a very heavy car for its size, which means that, come on, will that even stay? Probably not. Well, this is a heavy car, so it's kind of like a huge bulldozer just smashing into the obstacles. You don't have that much angle with the front bulkhead to allow you to go up and over the terrain. You just kind of hit it with these big front tires, and it causes a really unstable ride off-road. And I would not recommend this if you want to go off-road, which is really sad, but it's the truth. The short wheelbase doesn't help with performance, although the proportions will help it a little bit more for the flipping over because of the high center of gravity. It still is going to make it unstable when trying to conquer the rougher terrain, you want something a little bit longer so that you can maneuver the obstacles a little bit nicer, because whenever you narrow it, it's basically just making the car shorter. So I guess you could ask the question, well, how can I take this car and turn it into a decent off-road car? Well, that's something that I'm going to be doing because I already have a lot of money into it. But I would suggest taking a Slash low center of gravity kit and putting larger tires on like this. That does mean that you're going to have more shafts braking, but that's going to allow you to get over the bigger obstacles. You're going to have a great amount of handling, or greater amount of handling. On road, it's going to perform better because of the lower center of gravity. You have a good 2 pounds worth of 2 to 3 pounds of electronics right there to lower down half an inch right where the diffs are, with the arms level to the ground. That's just going to allow you to really maneuver your car a lot more accurately, and it will make it much more agile. It's decent performance for its size. Whenever you look at something like the HPI Bullet, it's going to be right up to par with that. But in terms of handling for any RC overall, if you look at different cars that this could be competing against, it just doesn't quite stack up. And I don't think that this really does fit the monster truck category for what monster trucks are. I think that you should be able to go over rough terrain without much of a problem, and this one definitely creates a problem. So an overall summary of this car, I give it about a 5 to 7 out of 10, depending on the amount of money that you put into it. This for me right now is a 7, and it can become a 9 out of 10 with the Slash low center of gravity chassis. Stock, I couldn't rate it any more than maybe a 5.5 out of 10 because of its lack of durability and weak parts that you're gonna have. The motor is a little bit more for two-wheel drive cars, and the overall performance, it wasn't there for me. It's overpriced at $500. I have no doubt that you can get a better car for $500. You could get a Vitara, Helix, however you want to pronounce it, for $400, right around $400, and that's gonna give you a lot better value for your money. I'm not saying that the car is outperforming the Stampede because I've never driven it. I have felt it, seen the setup, seen the shock setup and everything, and it seems fairly comparable when you look at the two side by side. But whenever you factor in the price difference, I would go ahead and get the Vitara. The Slash low center of gravity would be a better starting point than this car for off-road. As much as I really don't like Thunder Tiger, I would recommend the ST4G3 over this car. And in terms of durability, although I haven't had that much success with the MT4, with the ST4 only running on 4S Max, that will keep the speeds a little bit lower. It's laid out a little bit more like a truggy. You will still have a lot better durability than you're going to have with this car. You're going to have the bigger size. But if you are looking for something small enough to just throw into the backseat of your car, not going to have to worry about running 2 batteries or a huge brick pack, you just want to throw in a 10 scale pack and go have fun, you are definitely going to enjoy this car. But if you're an experienced RC hobbyist, or if you want to have a lot of off-road fun with this car, you're going to want to look elsewhere, just basically because of the performance and the size. So with that, I'm basically just going to sum up this video and the car overall and say goodbye. I would recommend this car but I wouldn't recommend this car. If you want to have a fun small basher to bring over to your friend's house or whatever, and you know, just have fun with it on road, on grass, in your front yard, it should be fine. But if you want to go to a serious off-road area with obstacles, and I'm not saying rock climbing kind of obstacles, I'm saying just like boulder or rocks this big all over the place, you're always going to be flipping this thing over. So yeah, with that, I'm going to say goodbye. If you have any questions, put them down below in the comments. I do hope that you enjoyed this video. I don't think it went exactly as I would have liked it to go, but I hope that I did get my point across to you, that this car isn't necessarily a bad car, but it needs a lot more money. I would say that you're going to have to put in another $100 to get this even reliable and drivable for mid-strength bashing. So talk to you guys later.